I had been waiting for that evening for weeks. My boyfriend, Daniel, wasn't exactly the most romantic guy in the world, but when he suggested we should go out to celebrate our 6-month anniversary, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he had something special planned. Maybe he wanted to prove that beneath his casual attitude, there was still a man who cared about me the way I cared about him. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, brushing my hair until it shimmered under the soft light of my lamp. I had chosen a dress that made me feel confident, deep blue, with a gentle flow that hugged my waist but didn't feel too revealing. I wanted to look beautiful, but not desperate. My stomach fluttered with a nervous energy, the kind that makes you question every detail. Lipstick too bold? Shoes too simple? Hair too straight? When Daniel arrived to pick me up, his car headlights spilled into the driveway. I grabbed my purse and stepped outside with a smile. But instead of complimenting me, instead of even giving me a second glance, he barely muttered, "Let's go, we're late." My heart dipped just a little, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was stressed, maybe the reservation was tight. I told myself not to overthink. The restaurant was one of those trendy spots downtown where the lights are dim, the music low, and the tables a little too close together. When we walked in, I noticed Daniel looking around as if he was searching for someone. That was my first red flag. Seconds later, I understood why. He hadn't made it a dinner for just the two of us. His friends were already seated at a large table in the center, laughing loudly, drinks half finished. I froze for a moment. This wasn't what I had imagined at all. 6 months together, and instead of something intimate, I was about to sit through a group hangout where I'd be the odd one out. But again, I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a smile, and followed him. The night went on with me trying to squeeze into conversations that weren't meant for me. His friends joked about things I didn't understand, inside jokes, stories from nights out I hadn't been part of. I laughed politely, sipped my drink slowly, and reminded myself, just get through the night. But then, the moment that would break me came so suddenly, so brutally, that I can still hear the echo of his voice. One of his friends nudged Daniel and asked, "So man, what's the deal with you two? She's the girlfriend now, huh?" The way he said it made it sound like I was some kind of experiment. I braced myself for Daniel to defend me, to say something sweet, something reassuring. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Yeah, she's mine. Don't know how I put up with her though. She's kinda ugly, right?" The table erupted in laughter. My ears rang. My cheeks burned so hot I thought they might blister. For a second, I thought I had misheard. But no, every giggle, every smirk, every glance told me it was real. Ugly. That word sliced through me like glass. He had said it so casually, like it was a punchline, like my existence was a joke for their entertainment. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to disappear. I excused myself quietly, but he didn't even notice. Too busy clinking glasses with his friends, too busy enjoying the spotlight at my expense. When I returned from the bathroom, trying to compose myself, the night only got worse. He leaned across the table, smiled at me in a way that felt cruel, and said, "You know what, I think we're done here. I don't think this is working out. Yeah, it's over." His words hit me harder than any physical blow. He dumped me right there, in front of everyone, in the middle of laughter, in the middle of plates still half full of food. My chest ached so badly I thought I would break apart. I didn't argue. I didn't cry there. I just stood up, pushed my chair back with trembling hands, and walked out of the restaurant. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, sharp, and merciless. And as I walked down the empty street, heels clicking on the pavement, I kept hearing that word over and over again in my head. Ugly. 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 But deep down, a tiny voice whispered, "This isn't the end of my story. It can't be." Before I go deeper into my journey, let me pause for a second. If you've ever been in a situation where someone made you feel worthless, where someone humiliated you in front of others, please know you're not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share this video. Your support helps me keep telling the stories that matter. I didn't cry until I reached the corner where the streetlights turned from a warm amber to a colder white, the kind that makes every flaw seem sharper. The night was noisy with Friday laughter, clinking glasses, Uber doors slamming, and distant music, but in my head there was only that one word, tolling like a bell I couldn't silence: ugly. It felt like it had been branded on my forehead, like passers-by could read it, like the wind could carry it back to me again and again. I ordered a rideshare with shaking hands. While the app searched for a driver, I stared at my reflection in a dark restaurant window, warped, ghosted, a duplicate hovering a beat behind me. I tried to find the girl I had been 2 hours earlier. Hopeful. Nervous. Soft. She felt gone, like the dress had turned into a costume, like the eyeliner marked a character I no longer wanted to play. When the car pulled up, I slid into the back seat and mumbled my address, wrapping my arms around myself as if I could hold all the scattered pieces in one place. The driver glanced back once in the mirror. He didn't ask what happened. I was grateful. Silence felt like a blanket. I pressed my forehead to the cool window and watched the city smear past. Red taillights. Neon signs. That tiny bakery where Daniel once told me their croissants almost tasted like Paris. Almost. How many almosts had I lived on with him? Almost kind. Almost attentive. Almost love. I thought about my mother, how she used to say, "People show you their character when it's inconvenient for them to be kind." Tonight hadn't been inconvenient for Daniel, it had been sport. That realization stung worse than the insult. The man I had made excuses for had treated my heart like a party trick. When I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I recognized but didn't want to see. 2 of Daniel's friends had sent laughing emojis and a no hard feelings text that I imagined they thought counted as kindness. There was a voice note from a coworker inviting me out next weekend, a spam notification about a sale, and one message from Maya: "Are you okay? I have a weird feeling. Call me." I set the phone face down on the counter like it might bite. The apartment felt too quiet. I slipped off my heels, padded to the sink, and poured a glass of water I didn't really want. The mirror over the stove caught me again, a smaller, harsher reflection. I tugged a makeup wipe across my cheek and watched a streak of mascara smear. It looked like a bruise. I took another wipe, then another, scrubbing until my skin felt raw. When I finally looked up, the naked face staring back didn't look ugly or beautiful. It looked tired. Human. Hurt. I couldn't stop replaying the scene. The particular angle of his smirk. The way his friends leaned in. The punchline he tossed like a coin into a wishing well, except I was the well, and he'd thrown in a stone. I wanted to understand why. Was it to impress them? Was it to create distance before he ended it? Was it because he knew the exact soft spot to hit if he wanted me to crumble without making a scene? The doorbell chimed in my memory. No, it was my phone. Maya again, this time calling. I let it ring, then picked up on the second call because avoiding the world started to feel like agreeing with it. "Hey," I whispered, and that was all it took. I started crying for real, the kind of cry that comes from somewhere behind your ribs, that rattles things you didn't know could move. Maya listened. She has this way of staying quiet without making you feel like you're talking to a wall. When I finally told her what happened, every detail I could remember, the word I couldn't forget, she said, "Come over now." It was close to midnight. I almost said no. But being alone with the echo of ugly felt like standing at the edge of a pool I didn't know how to leave. I grabbed my keys and went. Her apartment smelled like peppermint tea and clean laundry. She wrapped me in a hug and didn't let go for a long time. "You are not what he said," she murmured into my hair. "You are not what he said." I believed her for a second. I let the sentence settle in my bones. We sat on her couch under a knitted blanket, and she handed me a mug with a chip on the rim, and we watched a stupid cooking show where contestants made cakes shaped like hedgehogs. I focused on the hedgehogs. I focused on sugar and butter and a judge who took himself too seriously. At some point Maya said, "He did you a favor." I turned to her, stung. She held up a hand. Not with the cruelty, that was unforgivable. But with the clarity. "You didn't have to spend months wondering if you were asking for too much or being too sensitive. He told you who he is." She was right, and I hated that she was right, because clarity can hurt worse than confusion when it first arrives. I slept in her guest room. Morning light came soft and forgiving, the kind that turns everything it touches into something gentler. My first thought was still that word, but it landed less sharply, like a paper airplane instead of a dart. I made coffee while Maya showered and scrolled through my photos out of habit. The grid was a museum to a small life: brunch plates, plants that refused to die, Daniel's half-profile in a baseball cap, my hand in his under some string lights. I hovered over the trash icon and couldn't do it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to rewrite the past. I was only just learning how to carry it without letting it dictate my posture. On the walk back to my place, I passed a florist setting buckets of peonies on the curb. They were the blush kind, so full they looked like they might burst with one more breath. A woman about my mother's age caught me looking and said, "The trick is to cut the stems at an angle." I smiled. "For the flowers?" "For yourself," she said, then laughed. "Sorry, I always talk like a fortune cookie." I laughed too. It felt good. Back home, I made a list on a yellow sticky note because lists felt like rails I could steady myself on. Block him. Tell the truth to myself, not the version that flatters him. Do one kind thing for my body today. Do one kind thing for my mind today. Don't let one word become a mirror. I blocked him. The little gray confirmation popped up like a blessing. For my body, I took a long walk without counting steps, just moving until my blood felt less like static. For my mind, I opened a fresh notebook and wrote, "I am more than what was said about me." I wrote it 10 times. The repetition was a rope I could grip, hand over hand, pulling myself up from a place I didn't choose to fall. That afternoon, I got a message request on social media from someone I didn't know. My stomach lurched. But it wasn't from him. It was from the waitress at the restaurant. She said she had seen what happened, that it wasn't okay, that she had wanted to say something but didn't want to make it worse. She wrote, "I hope you know you deserved better than that." I stared at that sentence for a long minute. It didn't fix anything. But it stitched a small seam closed inside me. That night, I washed the dress by hand and hung it on the shower rod. The water ran dark at first, like the fabric was bleeding out the evening. When it cleared, I pressed the cloth between 2 towels and rolled it, careful not to twist. Tomorrow, I decided, I would wear the softest sweater I owned and buy peonies and learn how to cut stems at an angle. I would go slow. I would not rush myself into a lesson before I could breathe through the chapter. The words still rang. But around it, another word began to hum, low and steady, quiet but persistent as a heart, enough. Healing looks glamorous on the internet, candles, baths, a calendar of sunrises, but in real life it's a sequence of rooms you move through, each with a different temperature. Some days are a kitchen with morning light and toast that doesn't burn. Others are a basement with a single dangling bulb and boxes labeled "Don't open yet." I learned to stop judging which room I woke up in and just walk around the space, touch the walls, find the door. The first Monday back at work, I arrived early and opened my laptop like it might explode. Emails waited, polite and demanding, a client call, a deck to polish, a reminder about Friday's presentation. I welcomed the normalcy. There's mercy in action. I made a new playlist, no breakup anthems, no ballads, and let songs with clean percussion march me forward. When my boss swung by, he said, "You good to lead the Q3 metrics meeting?" I said yes before my stomach could argue. I needed to hear my own voice speak with authority in a room that didn't know it had been broken. At lunch, I sat on a bench outside with Maya. She kept her jokes in her pocket, only pulling them out when my face turned too serious. If Daniel were a condiment, she said, he'd be room temperature mayonnaise. I snorted, almost choked on my sparkling water, and that felt like winning. In the evenings, I made small rituals. I wrote for 10 minutes, stream of consciousness, no punctuation rules, no judging the mess. I cooked simple meals I could finish, pasta with lemon and pepper, eggs with tomatoes, soup from a carton used up with garlic and kale. I lit a candle even when I thought it was silly. I added a sticky note to my mirror that said, "How would you speak to a friend?" The first few days I avoided the mirror altogether. Then I started forcing eye contact. I didn't compliment my looks. I complimented my presence. Thank you for getting out of bed. Thank you for answering emails. Thank you for walking around the block when you wanted to scroll his page. That last one, his page, was the trapdoor. The second week, I fell through it. I told myself I only wanted to confirm he hadn't posted about me. But as soon as I searched, the algorithm rolled out a red carpet. There he was, tagged at a different bar, laughing with the same friends, arms slung over a new girl's shoulders like she was a borrowed jacket. My breath caught. I zoomed in without meaning to. The caption from his friend read, "King Energy." I locked my phone and tossed it onto the couch like it had burned me. I sat on the floor and let the wave hit. It washed over my scalp, down my spine, pulled hot at the base of my throat. I didn't fight it. Fighting makes you swallow salt and call it strength. I told myself, you are allowed to feel this and still be healing. When the water receded, I texted Maya, not with a half joke but with the truth. I looked at his page. It hurt. She replied in under a minute, "Proud of you for saying it out loud. Come over. Tea in a movie where the bad guy gets arrested for a parking ticket." The next day, I booked a therapy session. Not because I couldn't survive without it, people survive worse every day, but because I wanted to do more than survive. The therapist's office had soft chairs and a plant that seemed fake but was real. She asked me to tell the story the way I remembered it, then asked me to tell the story the way I would tell it if I were protecting someone I loved. The second version was different. I noticed where I had previously minimized the cruelty, where I made excuses for him I would never make for anyone who hurt my sister or my friend. We talked about shame, how it borrows your own voice to do its work. How the word ugly had become a ventriloquist, speaking through me. She taught me to ask, "Who's talking right now?" When the answer was his smirk, I learned to say, "Not today." I started moving my body without punishment. Running felt like chewing gravel, so I didn't run. I walked. I stretched while watching old sitcoms, holding each pose until the laugh track softened my jaw. I took a beginner's boxing class where my punches looked like polite taps and the coach still fist bumped me like I'd knocked down a wall. One morning, an older woman in the locker room said, "Your posture is lovely." I wanted to cry. Compliments land differently when you're rebuilding, they feel less like decorations and more like scaffolding. Work became a terrain I could navigate again. I led the Q3 metrics meeting with slides that clicked cleanly from one to the next. Numbers are mercifully indifferent. They don't care who dumped you. They ask for clarity, and when you give it to them, they behave. When I finished, my boss said, "Great job. You made it understandable." The room clapped lightly. I walked back to my desk feeling like I'd learned to breathe in a new altitude. Some nights, loneliness still slunk in through the vents. I let it sit beside me like a stray cat I hadn't decided to adopt. I told it, "You can stay for one episode." On those nights, I wrote letters I didn't send, to the me from that restaurant, to the girl in the photo with her hand in his understring lights, to some future version of me who had forgotten this ache. "You are allowed to be soft and still be unbreakable," I wrote. Being unbreakable doesn't mean you will never crack. It means you know how to mend. A small, practical grace arrived on a Thursday. HR sent an email about stipends for continuing education. I skimmed the options and clicked storytelling for presentations because words are how I build bridges, and mine felt rickety. The class started in 2 weeks. After I registered, I bought fresh peonies from the same florist and asked how to cut the stems at an angle. She showed me, patient, precise. "Sometimes they just need clean water and room," she said. "Don't cram them in." I took that home with the flowers. I didn't become a new person. That's a lie that sells well. I stayed myself, the same laugh, the same bad habit of leaving cabinet doors open, the same love for lemon on everything, but I started treating myself as if I were someone I had sworn to protect. The word rang less often. When it did, I had other sounds to lay over it, a kettle singing, sneakers on sidewalk, my own voice saying, "Enough." On a quiet Sunday, I stood in front of my closet, touched the blue dress, and didn't flinch. I didn't put it on. I didn't burn it. I just acknowledged it like a chapter. Then I slipped into jeans and a white t-shirt and went to meet Maya for coffee, and when I caught my reflection in the cafe window, unfiltered, unposed, I didn't look away. The storytelling course met on Wednesday nights in a co-working space that smelled faintly of dry erase markers and new carpet. 10 of us circled around a projector while the instructor, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a voice like a cello, talked about arcs and stakes and the courage to name your truth without apologizing for its shape. "Audiences don't need you to be perfect," she said. "They need you to be present." We took turns presenting. At first, my hands shook when I clicked to the next slide. But then I found a rhythm, set the scene, share the number, tell the human why it matters. After class, a guy named Theo said, "You make data feel like a story." I thanked him and didn't blush. Compliments no longer felt like tests I might fail. Therapy kept unwinding knots I didn't know were tightening. One session, I admitted the part that embarrassed me most. I still wanted Daniel to text an apology. Not to get back together. Just to confirm I hadn't imagined the cruelty, to hear him say the word didn't define me. My therapist nodded. "Wanting repair is human," she said. "But don't confuse a missing apology with missing worth." She asked me to write the apology I deserved, then read it to myself in the mirror. It felt corny. It felt powerful. It felt like choosing to be the person who finally said the right thing to me. I began to edit my social circle with quiet scissors. I didn't make speeches. I simply stopped giving my attention to people who confused sarcasm with intelligence, who told stories where the punchline was always someone else's softness. In their place, I leaned into friendships where laughter was a lift, not a weapon. I hosted small dinners with mismatched plates. We ate on the floor when I ran out of chairs. We played a game where we complimented not looks but choices. I love how you rest when you're tired, Maya said to me once. I breathed that in like oxygen. On a Saturday morning, I booked a haircut. Not a drastic one, this wasn't a movie, but I asked for blunt ends and bangs that brushed my eyebrows. When the stylist spun me toward the mirror, I didn't gasp or cry. I smiled because I looked like myself. I want to take up my own space more, I told her. She said, then keep your shoulders back when you walk out. I practiced down the street, a woman with a tote full of clementines, a playlist in her ears, and a spine that understood it didn't have to apologize. Work recognized my steadiness. My boss asked me to co-lead a new client pitch. The old me might have hesitated, worried about being too visible. The current me said, yes. I can own the narrative. I drafted slides at my kitchen table, peonies fading gracefully in a jar beside my laptop. When I practiced, I imagined speaking to the version of me who had walked out of that restaurant. I imagined telling her, you will not be reduced to the worst thing someone said about you. You will not make a home in their sentence. One evening, I opened the blue dress garment bag. I didn't put it on. I laid it across my bed and pinned a small note to the hanger, you were there, but you are not it. Then I zipped it back up and slid it to the side to make room for a suit I bought for presentations, a soft gray that made me feel like a weather front rolling in with rain we needed. Sometimes, late, I still imagined the perfect clapback, the line I could have tossed across the table that night, the one that would have frozen laughter midair. But each time I wrote it in my head, it sounded like me trying to win a game I no longer wanted to play. So I let those scripts drift by like junk mail. Not everything requires a response, some things require a door closing with your hand steady on the knob. Then came the text. It arrived on a Tuesday at 11:14 p.m., the hour when courage dresses as insomnia. Hey. Can we talk? The number was familiar even from the corner of my eye. I stared at it until the dots stopped pulsing. My heart thumped, not with excitement but with old muscle memory, like a song I didn't mean to hum. I placed the phone on my nightstand, screen side down, and didn't reply. I slept with the deep, honest sleep of someone who has nothing to prove. In the morning, another message, I've been thinking a lot. I'm sorry for how things ended. No specifics. Apologies without nouns are easy to mail. I sipped my coffee. My therapist's voice visited, don't confuse a missing apology with missing worth. I typed, I'm not available for this conversation. I wish you well. I pressed send. My thumb trembled, then stilled. The quiet that followed was the good kind. A week later, I gave the client pitch in my gray suit. I didn't think of him once. Afterward, in the elevator, Theo said, you held the room. I smiled. I held myself, I said, and he grinned like I'd told a private joke we both understood. Spring edged toward summer. The florist set out buckets of tulips. The light stayed later. I invited my neighbors to a stoop potluck and met a woman who teaches ceramics. You should take a class, she said, so I did. My first bowl was lopsided, and I loved it. The teacher said, there's beauty in the wobble. I wrote that down. I wrote a lot down. I was building a vocabulary for a life where I didn't have to earn my softness. Then, the universe, with its odd timing, set the stage, a mutual friend's birthday dinner at a new restaurant downtown. I almost skipped it. I almost stayed home with pasta and an early bedtime. But I put on the gray suit jacket with jeans, the bangs I'd learned to tame, and the lipstick that felt like a secret handshake with myself. I walked into a room full of voices and clinking plates, and I took up my chair like I had paid for it. I had, over the months, in installments of courage. Across the room, I saw a familiar tilt of a head, a familiar profile under two bright lights. Daniel. He saw me a second later. There was a hitch in his expression, then a smile that tried too late to remember charm. He didn't come over. He circled, like a shark who'd lost the taste for blood but hadn't stopped being itself. I felt my ribs rise and fall. I was fine. I was more than fine. I was present. When our friend brought everyone together for a toast, our eyes met. I didn't look away. Not defiance, just equilibrium. He lifted his glass a fraction. I didn't mirror him. I pressed my palm to the table I had chosen to sit at and felt the solidness of wood under skin. The night unspooled without incident. Laughter here, a story there, a shared dessert spoon. I walked home under streetlights and realized that somewhere along the way, the mirror had stopped being an enemy. It had become a window. I didn't plan the final chapter. Life rarely consults us on structure. It was a Sunday, sunny and unpretentious. I was out with Maya after our ceramics class, hands still dusted with clay, when she said, "Let's get lunch." Your pick. We wandered into a neighborhood we didn't frequent. The awning was striped, the door painted the kind of red that makes you think of cherries and good luck. Only when the host asked, "Table for two?" did my stomach drop. The dining room was different, renovated, lighter, but the bones of it were the same. This was the restaurant. Not a copy. The restaurant. A ghost walked over my grave and then, surprisingly, kept walking. Maya felt me pause. "You good?" she asked, following my gaze. I nodded. "I think so. Let's sit by the window." We ordered iced tea and salads. I expected flashbacks, the heat in my cheeks, the ringing in my ears, but what arrived instead was a series of small, clear images, the waitress's gentle eyes, the cold night air kissing my skin, the sidewalk shining like an omen I misread. They felt catalogued now, labeled and shelved. I had become the librarian of my own pain. Halfway through lunch, the door chimed. "You already know." Daniel walked in with two of the same friends from that night. I could tell by the nervous swipe of his hand across his jaw that he recognized the place, too. The host greeted them, and they glanced around, scanning for a good table, for an audience, for each other. His gaze landed on me like a skipped heartbeat. For a moment, we just looked. Not a duel. Not a scene. A meeting of two people who had shared a small, complicated story and then gone on to write different ones. He came over because of course he did, some roads are too easy to take. "Hey," he said, voice pitched low, like a radio tuned between stations. "Can we talk for a second?" Maya lifted an eyebrow at me. "Your call," her face said. I nodded for him to continue, but didn't invite him to sit. Boundaries can be furniture. He spoke in sentences that had clearly been polished in his head. He'd been immature, drunk on his friend's attention, he'd thought cruelty was comedy, he hated that he'd hurt me, he'd been to therapy a couple times, he added quickly, like I might award extra credit. He said the word ugly only once, wincing as if naming it might cause it to sprout anew between us. "I'm sorry," he finished. Not performative. Not entirely. But I recognized the limitation. He wanted absolution because it would make him feel better, not because he had a right to it. "I accept that you've said those words," I replied, calm as water in a glass. "I don't accept them as the definition of what happened or who I am. I don't carry them anymore. You gave them to me in public, I returned them to myself in private." He swallowed. "You look good," he said, reaching for something safer. I almost laughed. Not cruelly. With genuine lightness. I look like me, I said. That's the whole point. He nodded, a little lost. I'm glad you're okay. I'm more than okay, I answered, not to impress him but to tell the truth in the room where a lie had once been told. He lingered. Do you think, maybe, we could? No, I said, as kindly as I could. No, thank you. The thank you mattered. It wasn't for him. It was for me, for the woman who had learned that refusal can be gracious and still be an answer. He stood there a second more, then said, right. Yeah. I get it. He didn't, not fully. But he left. Maya squeezed my hand under the table. Proud of you, she whispered, and then, grinning, you handled that like a CEO of emotional logistics. I snorted, a sound that loosened something in my chest. The salads arrived. We ate. The world didn't tilt. It steadied. On my way to the restroom, I passed the waitress station. A woman with a messy bun looked up, curious. Were you here a while ago? I asked, unsure if I wanted recognition. She tilted her head. I've worked here a long time. I hesitated, then said, there was a night. I was humiliated here. Her face softened. A lot happens inside these walls, she said. Sometimes the best we can do is serve water and not look away. I smiled. Someone once wrote to me after, I said, surprising myself. It mattered. She nodded like she knew. Back at the table, I took a photo of the sunlight pooling on our plates. I didn't post it. I just saved it, a private proof that you can return to the scene of the sentence and write a different ending. When we stepped outside, the day was bright enough to make the sidewalk sparkle. The red door closed behind us with a sound that felt final and kind. I slipped my arm through Maya's. We walked toward the florist because peonies were back in season. I knew how to cut the stems now. At an angle, with room to bloom. I thought about mirrors, the cruel ones and the true ones. For a long time, I had let other people's words be the only reflections I trusted. Now, I understood the simplest, hardest thing: your worth is not a vote. It's not a debate. It's a pulse. You listen. You honor it. You keep it safe. I don't wake up every morning feeling radiant. That's not how this works. Some days are still basements. Some days I still want to scroll. But most days, I can meet my own gaze and think, I'm glad I get to be with you today. That's a sentence I wrote myself. No one can take it from me. And if you ever find yourself in a room where someone builds their laughter out of your bones, I hope you walk out with your spine intact and your heart whispering the steady word that kept me afloat: enough. If this story resonated with you, even a little, leave a comment telling me which moment hit home and why. Like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that their worth isn't up for debate. Your voice in this community helps more people step out of cruel rooms and back into themselves.